exciting webinar. We're very pleased to share the news that we're continuing to develop the FARMAX FarmIQ integration. So we're going to show you through what we've done thus far and the future direction of where we're heading to as well. So without further ado, we shall crack on with our webinar here. So just a brief agenda. First up, we'll go through some introductions, and we'll do a bit of setting the scene, how we got to where we are, and we'll talk about where we are as of today, what we've just built. That includes the new reports and the widgets, and then we'll go through what the future plans are for the FarmIQ FARMAX integration, and we'll also have some time at the end to go through some questions and answers. But firstly, we have a question for you. What data would you like to see moving between the two systems, from FarmIQ to FARMAX, and the other way around as well, from FARMAX to FarmIQ? Because we just like all the work we do, we prioritize, we do the low-hanging fruit first. And we'd love to hear your feedback, because we do listen and we take it into account. And also just to get the chat box open up, why don't you say who you are, what profession you are? Are you a farmer yourself, or are you a farm consultant, bank manager, whatever, and whereabouts in this country that you're calling in from? So yeah, two questions for you there. Have a crack with the chat box, and then we'll get to them at the end of our webinar. So moving on, who are we? First off the rank is me, Russell MacKay, Head of Sales and Marketing from a sheep and beef farm down here in Southland. I've done an array of things over the past, from farming, shepherding, some rural banking, dog sledding, and a few other bits and pieces. But I've been with FarmIQ for a couple of years now. And then moving on to Mr. Botica. Tom, why don't you introduce yourself to the folks?
Yeah, afternoon everyone. Like Russell, also a Lincoln grad. Yeah, so I basically came straight from Lincoln into FARMAX and FarmIQ actually. So I'm getting close to 8 years ago now. I've got a bit of a mixed role in the business. So work on the sales side pretty closely with our rural professional channel. So farm advisors, farm consultants and the like. And I also look after a lot of the ongoing product development of FARMAX as well, kind of across the whole spectrum of our products. So covering dairy, red meat, and DSM, which is our dairy benchmarking platform too.
Great, thank you, Tom. And then next up we have Aaron. Say good day, Aaron.
G'day. Yeah, so I work for FarmIQ as a product owner. So sort of did my focus has more been on IT than farming. So did grow up on farms, but yeah, for the last 20 years been IT based. 10 years of that was primarily working with accountants, doing accounting systems, whether that was small business or actually the accounting systems themselves. Last 10 years was spent with FarmIQ, doing various roles. Most, for the last 5-6 years has actually been sort of in this product owner space. But yeah, focused mainly for FarmIQ on the web product and doing integration with partners. So that includes FARMAX, but also other partners like Pari, Gallagher, etc. So
fantastic. Cheers, Aaron. Alrighty. So firstly, just a little bit of brief context that I'll take you through, and then I'm going to pass it off to Tom and Aaron to talk through the nitty-gritty of the integration. So our why. So yeah, FARMAX and FarmIQ, they were two separate businesses and two separate products. And a couple of years ago, they became one business, but there were still two different products, and they're a bit siloed, but there's a lot of layover between the two. So we've been working a way of combining those. So we want to help farmers use both tools and keep their FARMAX file up to date. We want to avoid as much double handling of data as possible. That's not just between the FARMAX and FarmIQ integration. That's just in general. Farmers bloody hate putting the same piece of information in twice, sometimes 3 times. It's not just time consuming, but also to that third point, it leaves you open to errors as well when you're doing duplication. And the last point there, our last why, is so that farmers can make better and more precise data and have more precise data for tactical management decisions. basically, so you make the right choice at the right time for both financial and on-farm production. So that's our why, and now we'll move on to our existing integration. So Tom, why don't you take it away from here, mate?
Yeah, great. I will just share my screen and jump straight into FARMAX. Hopefully this is going to work all right. Cool. Is that coming through okay, Russ? Yep. Sweet. Okay, perfect. Cool. So this is FARMAX Red Meat. This will hopefully look familiar to many of you. So the existing integration that has data flying from FarmIQ into FARMAX has been around for a few years at this point. We have done previous webinars on sort of setting up the integration and getting started with it. Won't cover that in this session, but in one of the email follow-ups you'll get after this webinar, I believe we'll be sending through some info on that. If you're interested in getting it set up for the first time. So I'll briefly run you through what is in there at the moment, and then later in the session we'll talk you through some of the recent developments and things we've kind of got in the works or testing at the moment, and some of our future ideas too. And of course, can you get feedback from the people on the webinar about what you'd like to see there too, like Russ mentioned. So this is just one of my little test farms that I've got in FARMAX. So I'll fire up this monitoring file. There's a couple of ways you can have the FarmIQ integration set up. So I've got it set up here to prompt me immediately every time I open FARMAX to look for any new events that have been entered into FarmIQ. That could have been done on the web version of FarmIQ or on the mobile. So I'll hit OK to import any new events. And basically the areas that the current integration covers is stock transactions and pasture covers. So as you can see here, I've got one event, which will be a stock transaction of some description, and one cover ready to import from FarmIQ. So I'll hit OK. And you'll see in my pasture screen here, jump back. So it loads. You'll see my pasture screen here. I've got a few different pasture cover measurements that have been imported from FarmIQ over the past couple of months. So they'll have the nice FarmIQ banner on them so you can tell where they came from. And just like if you'd entered a pasture cover manually directly into FARMAX, they'll have a bit of an impact on what your projected covers doing over the next several months. So if you entered a cover in FarmIQ and that was a bit above, say, where FARMAX expected you to be at that time, that will come into FARMAX, and your rest of season pasture cover will kind of be lifted up as a result of entering in that information. We've also got a report that gives you a bit more info about the data that's flowing in. So that's up at this top farm level, the last import. If I go into there, you'll see my one transaction that just came in, which was a death that was there yesterday. If I click on that, it'll give me a bit more information. So that was in my Bulls 23 born mob. I had one death. Again, you get the nice FarmIQ banner. And if I come down to that specific mob, this is a very simple farm just with a couple of mobs for kind of demo purposes here. But if I come into the stock rec for that particular mob and look in August, you'll see that deaths come in and it's updated my stock numbers for August, which has an effect obviously on how many bulls I'm going to have available to sell later in the season as I get kind of into my planned events here in January, and then another sale there in April. So I think I'll hand it back to Aaron at this point, but that's a quick run through of the current integration.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Tom. So I'll just share my screen very quickly, Aaron, because we've got some goals here to go through that we have. And why don't you talk to these, Aaron?
Yeah, so we've got a few goals that we've trying to achieve. Some of these we're working our way through now. Some of them are slightly longer term goals. But yeah, so primarily one of the focuses was that we wanted to provide more data across. So as Tom sort of showed, we sort of do stock movement transactions at the moment, and we do a high level pasture cover, so a farm pasture cover. But we sort of want to make that a lot more in the way of the usable data that we've got. So that would be things like paddock level pasture covers, dollars on things, and so on. So there's a lot more data fields that we've sort of made available, and FARMAX are at the moment working through getting those integrated into the system and making sure they're working correctly. We want to automate the import of the FarmIQ data into FARMAX. So Tom sort of showed you that when it opened, he clicked to download it in. We want to sort of automate that process so that sort of the engine in FARMAX can sort of use that data immediately and can actually send the data back. And so that sort of moves on to our third point there, which is getting the key FARMAX model outputs, the KPIs displayed into FarmIQ. So if we can get the data from FarmIQ importing directly into FARMAX and being calculated, then we can actually get the KPIs directly out as well. And so we want to display a lot of those key KPIs in FarmIQ. It makes it more accessible to farmers that aren't using like FARMAX as well. So potentially if you've got a consultant or a manager that uses FARMAX, displaying the results out in FarmIQ might make it more available and more accessible to other staff in easy formats. We are working on building a FarmAX dairy integration. So it's sort of early stage at the moment. So we're looking at what data we can sort of bring into the dairy package. So it's not just red meat. And long-term lofty goal is to eventually shift away from the FarmAX from a local desktop application to a cloud-based software. So that's sort of our lofty goal. It's sort of a while off yet, so we're sort of working through getting integration going and making more communicated.
Okay, cool, Aaron, and we'll stick with you as we carry on here.
So this is sort of a high-level detail of some of what we've already got. So you'll see there in the recorded data, we've got stock transaction numbers and farm pasture covers. So that already exists in the current integration. Paddock areas, paddock pasture covers, and there is a new FARMAX block in FarmIQ. So those are all things that we've added and are sending across, along with mob weight, scanning, weaning, and the stock transaction dollar data. So all of that is stuff that we currently have upgraded, but it's in the process of being tested in FARMAX, so that won't be too far away in the future. The new part to this, and something that we haven't done before, and I sort of mentioned, is the key performance indicators. So we've done a lot of those key performance indicators that are in FARMAX. We can now display in FarmIQ, and we sort of give you a list of them. So farm production efficiency, dry matter eaten, GHD, farm per farm production, some supply versus demand graphs, some pasture growth, farm production, minimum feasible cover, and so on. So we've sort of added all of that in already. So we'll display that, and give you a demo of that as we go further through the slides. So this is a proposed dairy integration as it stands. So pasture covers, paddock areas, milk production, FARMAX blocks. You would get stock, although there's less dairy people doing stock entry in FarmIQ, so it's probably not quite as useful, but the other information certainly is. And yeah, we've got a couple of question marks on the recorded data. I'm sort of really interested in if there's other information such as feed consumed or things that are in FarmIQ that you would want sort of passing over in that integration. And again, on the key performance indicators, to close that loop, we would have very much similar, farm production efficiency and so on. We will show in the FarmIQ.
And then moving on to a view to the future, Aaron.
Yeah, so it is like there are several things that we are, we're working on here. We're looking to preserve FARMAX IP and its value to the farmers industry in a more modern technology. So this is sort of leaning towards moving away from that desktop app to the web, but we don't want to sort of lose any of that FARMAX IP and what it can do. So it's sort of a big challenge there for us. We want to have it so that there's we want to improve the way that the integration is set up. So if you've done it before, there's sort of a matching that goes on between mobs, and we don't really want to have that in the future. We want to make it as seamless as possible, make it feel like it's all one system. If you're talking, two tooths in one, you're talking two tooths in the other, etc. And we don't have any of these mob pains that we've had in the past. So we've done quite a lot of work on that already, showing some promising signs around, very quickly setting up a FARMAX file from a FARMIQ file and so on. So yeah, a bit of work to do there, but we are making progress. FARMAX now a more viable option for Mac users, and that's probably one that Tom could explain.
Yeah, I can do briefly if you like. So at the moment, FARMAX, just with the technology that sort of it's developed with, essentially, FARMAX only currently runs on Windows on a Windows desktop, as many of you will know. Whereas FarmIQ can run on anything because it's on the web. And yeah, we've got an iOS sort of Apple application and an Android application for FarmIQ. So if we could get FARMAX into that same sort of world, yeah, you'll be able to use your Macs and FARMAX at the same time, which would be very nice.
Yeah, and there's the potential for FARMAX IP to use on a finer scale for grazing, planning on FarmIQ web app and the mobile app. So yeah, FarmIQ records sort of down to a paddock level for all pasture covers and all of that. So as it said, we sort of sent over the farm level covers. We're going to be able to use paddock level for most things going forward. So.
I never understood the Mac versus Windows tension. It's almost like Ranger versus Hilux for the more IT savvy people, but man, some people are really passionate about it once you work for a software company. It's interesting. But moving on, we are going to be talking to the new report widgets. So why don't we have a look at what we've made there?
Yeah, I'll just share my screen. So, and I think Tom's going to do a bit of talking, but screen. So sort of quick overview, like to turn this on in FarmIQ, it's really simple. Up in the Office and the settings, there's this external company access, and it really is just press a button. And if you've got the integration set up to send data over, turning that on will bring the data back. And so that sort of opens up to this screen, which is sort of the new dashboard. So I'll let Tom actually have a chat through this one.
Yeah, sure. So thanks, Aaron. Essentially, all the data that you're seeing here is generated by FARMAX. So this is the first kind of step we've made with pushing FARMAX data through to FarmIQ. Historically, it's all been the other direction. FarmIQ is really good at recording sort of day-to-day activities and events and things on farm, and FARMAX is very data hungry. So so FarmIQ fits in really nicely to be able to provide FARMAX with the data it needs to provide really good forecasts. And the idea with reports like these is we're now starting to feed these forecasts through onto a really nice looking dashboard in FarmIQ. And we've got plans to sort of make the integration a lot smoother, I guess, as Aaron and Russell alluded to already. So it's not kind of there yet, but the idea would be that in future, you can enter a bit of data into FarmIQ, say a pasture cover measurement, and behind the scenes, without you having to do anything as a user, that goes through to FARMAX, kind of updates your pasture cover forecast, and you immediately see that updated cover projection in FarmIQ. That's kind of the point that we're really trying to get to, but this is our first crack at it, at kind of bringing through some production, some greenhouse gas information, and some feed supply and demand info into FarmIQ. So this is really just our first cut of data that we thought customers may be interested in. So hopefully hopefully we've done a reasonable job of that, but as always, open to feedback on what other stuff you may want to see. So at the moment, these will basically update each time you close and save and close out of your monitoring file in FARMAX. So that automatic kind of data flow isn't quite there just yet, as in if you enter something in FarmIQ, you will still need to open FARMAX, import those events, and resave it for this dashboard to update. But yeah, it's a really kind of major milestone for us to get through to having that tighter integration. And I'm not sure if you want to do a quick demo here, Aaron, but there is some flexibility to delete widgets off if you're not interested in them, and to add some new FARMAX stuff that's not in the default view if you want as well.
Yeah, so you can get more detail if you're interested, like you can enlarge some of these, print them, etc. moving them around, drag and drop, close them, delete them if you want to. You can always bring them back. This is a default dashboard, so you can reset this at any time and bring it back if you want to at this point. But there are other widgets that you can add as well, such as in the FARMAX production, get some options of what you want to do, like carcass type, etc. GHD are there, the KPIs, and you can just pick the KPI that you're after or interested in. It'll be as simple as that, and it will add another widget, sort of thing. So yeah, it's pretty flexible, but we have set up a few by default, and really just a case of finding out what are the most valuable ones to everybody at this point. If there's more that we can add, we're certainly keen to do that.
So these are the reports available at the moment, plus many more. So Tom, I'll let you speak to that, and then I'll just remind the folks that if you have any questions as we go along, please put them in the chat, and we'll get back to them at the end of the webinar. So Tom, why don't you just talk to the reports available?
Yeah, sure. I think you will have seen most of these in that screen share Aaron just did, but essentially the core areas that FARMAX covers in general for a farm, sort of feed and production, the financial kind of element of the farm as well. So if you make any changes to your feed budget and animal numbers, you can see how that impacts profitability as well. And in more recent years, we've added greenhouse gas components too. So we haven't really got into the financial side of things for the default view of the dashboard at this stage, just because we know pretty much every user using FARMAX is obviously using it for feed budgeting. That's kind of the core initial thing you do. Some people use the financial side of FARMAX really intensely and others don't. So it's not something we've added just yet, but certainly there if people want to see that in future. And we've got the greenhouse gas components too. And since FARMAX sort of captures all three of those areas, we can also give you some quite cool sort of efficiency type figures as well. So for example, how much CO2 equivalent is emitted per kilogram of meat produced, or product in general if you add on wool and velvet too. So yeah, that's the type of thing that you'll see in the dashboard there. But as always, open to feedback on what else you may want to see too.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tom. And as always, we're looking to the future. So Tom, why don't you show the folks what the future plan is?
Yeah, sure. If you just jump to the next slide. There's sort of a couple of stages to this. So there's things in the short term that should be available for users soon. I don't want to put any exact dates out there, but soon they should be there. And those are basically just bringing in more data points from FarmIQ into FARMAX. So as kind of we speak, we're currently testing bringing in live weight events. So if you go out and weigh a mob of bulls or something, for example, bringing that live weight event through to FARMAX. We know that's a data point that a lot of people are double entering at the moment because live weights are very crucial on FARMAX red meat. It allows you to sort of back calculate obviously the weight gain that those animals have done up until that weighing. It impacts the amount of dry matter that FARMAX thinks has been consumed on the farm, and from a financial perspective, it will make sure it sort of calculates an accurate sale weight, so that when you send those animals to the works, we apply sort of a per kilo market price, and we'll give you a estimated kind of sale price for when you intend to sell those animals. So weights is one. We've got already sales and purchase transactions coming through for livestock, but we're not currently bringing through the prices on those transactions. So if you enter, for example, that you bought some bull calves for $500 a head or something, and you've entered that information into FarmIQ, that will soon flow through to FARMAX as well. And probably a little more challenging one for us, just because FarmIQ and FARMAX work in slightly different ways around how they approach the reproductive cycle, is mating and scanning information, but we're sort of working on a few things behind the scenes to try and bring some mating data from FarmIQ into FARMAX too.
Yeah, that weights one, Tom, that's a big one. I see a couple of people have put that in the chat, and
cool.
we've just recently released our integration with Tapari at the cloud level, and we're looking to push it to other providers as well. So now, instead of going to entering the data 3 times, it could be the point where you're not entering the data at all flows, your EID weights come into FarmIQ without touching a button, and then hopefully soon your weights will go from FarmIQ to FarmX without touching a button. It's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, that's a good point. I probably said a few times there that you enter this data into FarmIQ, but you may not actually do that at all. It's just it gets into FarmIQ from some other tool that you're using, like Tapari scales, and eventually makes its way right through to FarmX is kind of the idea. So.
Yeah. So that's work in progress. But what about looking forward a little bit further, mate? What's happening in the future?
Yeah, so things we're kind of thinking about at the moment, and we'll hopefully get into soon, like Aaron already mentioned, dairy integration. FarmIQ, I guess historically is a sheep and beef farmer kind of focused tool, but we do have dairy customers, and we do have milk production data coming in from a few different milk companies. So that could be a really good milk production data could be a really good thing for us to test out, bringing data through in a more automated kind of behind the scenes fashion where the user doesn't have to say, yes, import my information. With stock transactions and things, there's a little bit more user interaction required because you need to tell, you sort of need to tell us which FarmIQ mobs belong to which FarmX mobs and that type of thing. Well, that's not going to be the case when you just enter in bulk milk production values. So that'll be a nice one for us to test out, kind of just bringing that through automatically. And that's a painful one, I know, for our dairy users to have to enter every month. So that's one we're working on. Whether that expands out to stock transactions and supplementary feeding, again, open to feedback on what users think would be useful there. But at the very least, bringing through milk production data will, I think, be a no-brainer for us to do when we get there. Further enhancements to FarmX to FarmIQ flow integration. So I've already mentioned some of the additional data points that we're working on, but just bringing through that information in a fashion where the user has to do less and less, and ideally nothing, for that information to come into FarmX is kind of the idea there. And something we've actually already had reasonable success testing on is creating FarmX files from FarmIQ data. So if you're already using both tools, you will know that when you set up a FarmX file, that's sort of where a lot of the time-intensive stuff really is. Like you're setting up all your blocks and your mobs and different enterprises and what have you. We've actually got a lot of that data already in FarmIQ. So if you're an existing FarmIQ user and you're interested in picking up FarmX, we've been able to create pretty accurate FarmX files with all your mobs and stock numbers and things just directly from your FarmIQ data. So that should save a lot of time. There'll still be a bit of data input required to do more of the forecast events when you set up, say, a 24-25 season budget, but certainly for getting all your stock numbers in their season to date, that should be a big time saver for new people coming on to FarmX. So those are some of the things we've got.
Fantastic. Okay, we're getting to the business end, folks. It's time for questions and answers. So if you have any questions, please throw it out in the chat. I've got a few here already. The first one here I've got here is, what subscription tiers do you need for FarmIQ and FarmX? Tom, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, sure. I might let you guys cover the FarmIQ side, but on the FarmX side, you need, so the integration is currently just with red meat, but it'll be the same once we get the dairy one there as well, I imagine. You basically need a FarmX Advantage subscription. So FarmX only has 2 sort of subscription tiers really at the moment: Analysis, which is a one-off 3-month subscription, and Advantage, which is an ongoing monthly subscription. So you do need to be on that Advantage tier to bring the FarmIQ data in.
And then on the FarmIQ side, you need either Performance Plus or Pro. Those are our 2 packs that have a live up-to-date stock rec. So just in order to actually work, you have to be on one of those 2 packs there. Aaron, this is more of a question for you here. Will I still be able to use FarmX as a standalone product?
Certainly for the short to long term, yes. In the as we mentioned, we want to move it to a cloud-based solution. What exactly that looks like at the moment, I'm not sure. It's sort of the long-term lofty goal. To make it more accessible, as well as future-proofing it. We certainly don't want to remove any of the capability that people have got now for consultants and so on. So yeah, it's certainly something we'll be taking into account as we sort of do the rebuild and redesign. But yeah, for the short term, both products still exist. We just want them to talk better together to make it easier for farmers to do things and make it less work, really.
Great, thank you, Aaron. And I've got another one here. Tom, I'll let you field this one, mate. Can I have individual farmlets within FARMAX feed into different FarmIQ farms?
Yeah, sure. So basically, it does need to be a one-to-one relationship between like one farm in FarmIQ and one farm in FARMAX. So if you have that one farm in FarmIQ, your stock transactions and covers and things will flow through into FARMAX, and then FARMAX will push that forecast data through back to FarmIQ for your dashboard. So yeah, at this stage, it does need to be sort of a one-to-one relationship.
Great, thank you, Tom. If you have any other questions, folks, please put them in now. I'm just going through the chat. It's good to see so many people put in their requests of data they'd like going from one to the other. So stock transactions, stock rec. So yep, we're doing that now for the red meat side. Pasture covers, Victoria, thank you. Yep, we've got that for the red meat side. Stock weights, Tim, we've talked about that, we know that's a request, and that's what we're working on at the moment. What else have we got here?
Cropping and harvesting is there, regrassing. So certainly for cropping and regrassing, we're looking at that. We sort of ran into one little hiccup where the way FarmIQ treats crops and grasses, where we can have sort of a mixed crop and grass, which FARMAX doesn't sort of like. So we're just working through that little problem, but that is something that will be there in the future, and not too far away either.
And we've got here fertilizer applications going from FarmIQ to FARMAX. Thank you, Tim, for that input.
That's another one that we have actually been working on as well. So it's probably less trouble for us. There was one little pain point that we're working through, how FARMAX wants to deal with a piece of data, but yeah, otherwise we're all good on that one. So that'll be used in the near future too.
I've got a question here. What's the time frame for getting FARMAX dairy integrated with FarmIQ versus furthering the red meat FarmIQ integration?
Yeah, I have an initial crack at that. I hate to give promises on dates on these things because issues do come up in testing and that type of thing, and we obviously want to make sure that it's working really nicely before we push things out. But some of the red meat developments, like bringing through weights and prices, we're testing that at the moment. So that's sort of the top of the list for now. So that will hopefully not be too far away. And then, yeah, an initial relatively lean, probably dairy integration with a couple of data points coming through, probably milk production and maybe pasture covers would be, I think, the next thing we'll look at.
Yeah. From my team's point of view, we will continue to work on the integration. However, the next goal for us is dairy. So sort of in the next 3 months, we'll start sort of setting up the FarmIQ side of the integration across, and allow FARMAX to sort of work on it from there. So,
right. Got a question here from Richard. He says, promising stuff. In a perfect world, we would have our farm-focused financials integrated as well to prevent another duplication. Are there future plans here? Second question, cost of having FarmIQ and FARMAX bundled together. So I can answer to both of those. So we already integrate with Figure, and we have had discussions with Farm Focus in the past as well. It's actually a pretty tricky integration to make work by all accounts. Aaron is far more qualified than I to speak to that. But an integration with Farm Focus is definitely on our radar. And then the second part to the question is we don't offer a discount for both products together, unfortunately. It's something we've spoken about in the past, but for the time being, two separate products, separate prices. Do you gentlemen see any other questions or anything else we can address before we wrap up this webinar?
No. We certainly do have more integrations coming. Mentioned Pari, Gallagher's on the cards. We've had chats with the likes of Fonterra who, are open to it and so on. So yeah, there'll certainly be more integrations coming. So yeah, if there's others, we are talking with Farm Focus as well. So, but yeah, feel free to throw your, any key ones for you in there, and that'll certainly help drive our direction.
Okay, guys. I think we'll draw it to an end there then. Thank you so much for coming along to this webinar and participating as well. We really appreciate your feedback. We do listen. We want to make a product that's the most user-friendly product for both our farmers and consultants and other rural professionals. So we'll take that all on board. And yeah, we look forward to trying to deliver as much value as possible to New Zealand agriculture. So thank you very much for coming along, guys, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.
Catch us later.